All righty. Okay. So today, welcome. Today,
Okay.
yeah, we're going to cover some of the topics. This is what we've gotten so many questions about was like supplements and food. Last week, we really wanted to cover a lot of the lifestyle factors and kind of overarching principles of building immunity. But this time, we're going to get a little more specific with things you can do with supplements, herbs, and food. We've done a lot of fun research, and I found some cool stuff that I'm not really seeing anywhere else. I mean, they're in kind of obscure places. And so I'm excited to share some of this, help it go viral. Ha ha ha. Skya, do you want to say anything before we just start each of our parts?
Yeah, I'll just mention, that all of this is an adjunct to social distancing. Obviously, right now, the best thing you can do is just not catch this thing by not being around it and by not being around other people who have it. And please follow the CDC guidelines and your local or state guidelines because they might be even stricter right now, such as here in California. So, yeah, this is in addition to all of that.
Cool. All right. So, I'm going to be covering the part on herbs and supplements. And we have to always make the disclaimer for any of this stuff. We are not medical professionals, not trying to treat you for a medical condition. We're just trying to share experiences and information with you. And, please consult your health practitioner when making health decisions. All right, here we go. Okay, so the first priority is some of the stuff we talked about last week. You need to make sure that your body is working optimally. And, supplements and herbs are an adjunct to a healthy lifestyle. You cannot out-supplement a crappy diet and chronic stress and lack of sleep. So all the supplements in the world aren't going to fish you out of that hole. They might, cushion you or buy you some time while you get your lifestyle turned around. But this is, again, an adjunct to give you an extra boost on top of the wonderful self-care you're already offering yourself. So if you have any questions about that, you guys can review last week's webinar. And I also want to say, before I go into all the supplement stuff, if money is an issue for you right now, save your money for food, okay? Like prioritize food over supplements. Skya is going to be talking about that after me. Let's see. Okay, one of the things I want to start with explaining is it's not actually the virus that's killing people. It's the cytokine storms of our immune system. So it triggers such a strong immunological response as it progresses. The actual cytokine storms, which is something your immune system does, is what's actually ending up, putting people on respirators, causing damage to the lung tissue. And so,
what's cytokine storm?
cytokine storm, I just said it's something your immune system does because I was trying to really check.
It's the inflammatory response. So just to give it a little bit less of a jargony term, it's like the inflammatory response. Yeah.
So it's basically your immune system's response to try to stop something from being bad and hurting you, but sometimes it overreacts and actually can damage our tissue. So the virus can damage our tissue, but our own immune system can do that. Like we know in an autoimmune disease that can happen. And so this seems to just happen more with this strain of coronavirus. So I heard some really interesting research and information from a guy named Dr. Guillermo Ruiz, and he's a naturopathic doctor who's worked in a virology lab. So he specializes in virus and the immune system. And so it's interesting to find a holistic practitioner such as a naturopath who has also been trained to work in a laboratory as a scientist. So he has a really cool perspective, and I wanted to share something. I'm going to cobble together a lot of people's information. And again, another disclaimer, and everyone has to keep saying this, that this is all information that we're pulling together from different resources to make educated guesses about how to deal with coronavirus. There isn't a lot of research on how to use, there isn't research, there's some field experience in China with certain things, but it's, this is all still new, we're figuring it out. So we're just taking basic knowledge of the immune system and these basic principles and some lessons that have been learned since the outbreak to try to give you the best information we can. So one of the things that Dr. Ruiz points out is that there are three phases of consideration when you think about supplements and dealing with COVID-19. So the first phase is just prevention. Just try not to catch it. So social distancing, sanitation, self-care. Oh, that was all S's. So the three S's. So that's what you want to do. But we also want you to be prepared in the event you do get this. We want you to have an easier time of it, and we definitely want to keep you out of the hospital. So we want to prepare you for it. So we want to prepare for the worst and expect the best, okay? So when we're in the prevention phase, we want to build immunity, but we're not going to pull out the big guns yet, okay? Because we don't want your body to habituate to something that we might need later. The second phase is the early phase of infection, and at this phase, it's okay to ramp up your immunity to slow or halt the progression. And you can even shorten it, cut it off so it only lasts a few days. And they're saying that, you know, the amount of inoculation you get determines the severity plus, you know, your state of health. So if you're pretty healthy and you touch something, or if you don't have a high level of inoculation or you don't contract a lot of the virus, then you tend to have more of a mild case, whereas people who have more interaction or weaker immune system, then they're going to get sicker. And then also if you have a weaker immune system. The third phase is the advanced phase of infection, when it moves from your throat and upper chest and deep into your lungs. And so this is the time when those cytokine storms, or the inflammatory response of the immune system, starts to ramp up. And at that point, if you take herbs that ramp up your immune system, it could be very dangerous. It could range anywhere from making you just feel even sicker, like you're just miserable, to actually putting you in the hospital. So we want to be careful. And this is something I'm not seeing people talk about much at all. So we want to be aware of this. So I'm gonna send you guys, because these supplements, it's hard to remember all of them and process it all. And just me rattling off a bunch of names may not be even meaningful to some of you. I am going to send a document with the replay that just has a list of things that are my best recommendations based on the research we've done. But again, you know, use your own intelligence and do your own research. Okay, so phase one, there aren't that many things that I universally recommend for this for prevention. It's, again, more lifestyle self-care, but I'm going to tell you 3 things that I think everybody ought to be taking, and I know some of you already are, actually. And the first one is D3. We talked about this last week. D3 governs hundreds of immune markers. It's super important. So get out in the sun, and you might also want to supplement, especially if you're in a cloudy place. But just know, even if you go outside and it's overcast, you're still getting the sun's rays. So if for some reason you're indoors a lot and you can't go outside, then you really need to make sure you're supplementing with D3. The second one is, oops, I forgot to put this on Do Not Disturb, so it's making noises. Okay, so the second one I want to mention, hey, new arrivals, good to see you. So the second supplement I want to mention is NAC. It's called N-acetylcysteine. It's something your body uses to make this very important antioxidant called glutathione. Your liver's supposed to make this, but most of us are so stressed out and exposed to so many toxins that it's hard for our liver to keep up in the modern day. So this is something that it's good to take anyway. And Skya is going to tell you about things you can do with food to also boost glutathione and make NAC. So one of the things we need to know about NAC, like one of the things I tell my clients a lot is NAC helps support, thank you Skya for typing that out in the chat, I appreciate that. So one of the things I tell people is NAC is great for opening detox pathways, taking out the garbage, taking down inflammation in the body, and this is all very true. One of the things that's kind of a lesser known property of NAC, N-acetylcysteine, is that it has an extensive history of use as a mucus modifying agent. That means it helps support the respiratory tract by thinning out the mucus. So people who are exposed to smoke, respiratory toxins, have diabetes, obesity, other chronic conditions, or have more of a tendency to be low on glutathione. So the risk factors for more severe outcomes of COVID-19 are present in those populations. So by just simply supplementing with NAC, you can actually help protect your respiratory tract. Another thing that's cool about NAC is it's been used orally with great success in hospitals through breathing tubes. In China, I mean, this has been for a long time for all kinds of respiratory disorders like cystic fibrosis, but in China, they actually used NAC or glutathione, I can't remember, IVs with vitamin C to really get much better outcomes in patients.
Can I add real quick that glutathione is like our body's master antioxidant, and it's one of the molecules that protects you from basically instantaneous death from just the way that our chemistry works. So it's super important to have that, and that's part of your defense system. So she's basically talking about a supplement that gives you the building blocks for glutathione.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so so one of the things it does is it helps reduce the viscosity of mucus in the bronchial tube. So a lot of people are having, one of the complications of COVID-19 is the mucus getting really like thick and sticky and even hard, and people's in the alveoli, the little tiny lung sacs that fill with air and help oxygenate the blood, are getting like sticky and they're not able to function properly. So this is like higher doses. So if you start out with a kind of a maintenance dose preventatively, I'll talk about in a moment, like if you actually contract COVID-19, you actually want to up your dose to protect your lungs. Let's see, it can also help reduce cough and improve oxygen saturation. So
can I add real quick something, Tracy?
Yes.
They also use this as a standard practice in hospitals when you go in with an acetaminophen liver issue, because what happens when we take acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, is that it actually tanks our liver's ability to make glutathione. And so oftentimes people will have like a liver inflammation from that. And so one of the treatments they use is NAC to help bring the glutathione back up. So that's important to know right now, because one of the standard treatments for any kind of fever or aches and pains is acetaminophen. So if you're going to be taking acetaminophen, which we don't necessarily recommend, NAC is a really important thing to take with that.
And I prefer like something like curcumin or turmeric or something like that. And there are a lot of things, a lot of herbs that help lower fever you can research. So, and then there's a whole question of, do you want to lower fever when that's part of your body? So maybe if it gets where you're having an overreaction of your immune system, you might want to lower it. But if you want to allow some fever if you're sick, that's your immune system's got to do what it's got to do. You don't want to mess it up. Okay, third of the top 3 top recommended supplements is magnesium. Magnesium, I don't want to go into too much detail. It helps with everything. It helps with stress, with like digestive function, with methylation, detox. Don't worry about methylation. Some people know what that is, some people don't. It doesn't matter. But the point is, your heart needs it, your lungs need it, like every body function needs magnesium. So if you're low on magnesium, which is very common, especially if you're under stress or have a lot of toxic exposure, if you're feeling run down, and you want to take it to bowel tolerance, there are many forms of magnesium. You can pick whichever one you've been instructed to take or you like. There's magnesium citrate, tends to make you poo more. So if you're constipated, that actually can be something to help you go. It can actually help calm your nervous system. Magnesium glycinate, so that's Glycinate, and I'll send that out. Glycinate is less active on the bowels. It really helps with detoxification and methylation. And so if you're not having poo problems or you run a little loose, then you might want to have the glycinate form. But often the dose is just to bowel tolerance. Basically, take as much as you can without getting the and then I'm going to add, like, of the top 3, I'm going to add an extra one just in case. If you're anemic, you want to make sure that you have enough iron in your diet, which Skya will touch on. We prefer you get it through your diet, but there are iron supplements that don't constipate you. Now, if you have your medical goods of iron, you might get a prescription for, but if you're not in that kind of situation, then Skya Herbs makes a liquid iron supplement that's mostly food-based, so you can increase your iron levels. It actually tastes good. All right, so iron helps with oxygen transportation. Oxygen is a big issue, as you know, with COVID-19. So you can't afford to be anemic, so do the best you can to support your blood oxygen levels. Okie dokie. So those are the top ones that I want you to pay attention to and make sure you're supporting yourself with, if, assuming you have food in place first. So if there are a couple additional things, if you need additional support, like if, I think we talked about last week how, the way this virus gets into your system is through the nose, nasal passages, mucous membranes, and through the mouth, mucous membranes. And so if you don't have NAC actually helps support the nasal mucous membranes, and you can watch the replay from last week to get some other lifestyle tips. But if you don't have enough stomach acid and you don't make enough enzymes, you might have a harder time breaking down pathogens before they get into your bloodstream and end up in your lungs. So some people who have weak stomach acid, you can take hydrochloric acid, otherwise known as HCl, and then you can also take enzymes. So there are kind of enzymes called protease enzymes, and they help decrease the thickness of mucus. But they also increase mucus production to help just flush things out. And they increase ciliary transport. All that means is those little finger-like cilia, they're like these little fingers you might have learned about in high school in your respiratory tract that push the bad stuff back up out, like, get out of here, you're bad, right? And if stuff gets all the way into the lungs, once it gets into the lungs, you don't have any cilia deep in your lungs. Once it's in there, you don't have that protection. So you really want to support your mucous membranes getting stuff going back out the other way. So for the adventurous, there's something called shilajit. I refer to it as smoked elephant dung because it smells smoky, but then it kind of smells like the zoo. But but I've acquired a taste for it. You can get it in capsules, so you don't have to taste it. But this is a resin that forms under the snow in the Himalayas when all the vegetation ferments in the winter, and it makes this black resin, and it really just helps boost overall cellular function, including immunity. It gives you energy. I like it instead of any kind of stimulant for getting energy. So it's awesome. It's very common in Ayurvedic medicine if you're familiar with that. And then I get a lot of questions about probiotics. So I wish I could just say, this is the one great probiotic, but we all have a completely different microbiome. We all need different things. So you just want to make sure you get something from a good company. And if you take it and you get bloated or you get a change in bowel habits that isn't an improvement, then you want to stop taking it, even if you spend a lot of money on it, or just wait and take a break. And so again, we talked about last week how I'd rather you have a probiotic lifestyle than depend on a bunch of pills for your microbiome. So in Skya, we'll talk more about that. So let's see. And then there are medicinal mushrooms. I'm not necessarily referring to the hallucinogenic kind. So I think a lot of you guys have heard of mushroom supplements like lion's mane and cordyceps and reishi and maitake, shiitake, turkey tail. They all have different features that I'm not going to go into right now, but there's nothing wrong with taking those for immune support. But you can also eat foods that have similar properties that Skya will also talk about. Can't wait to hear from Skya. Another thing you can take for B vitamin support is desiccated liver. You just want to make sure it's from grass-fed animals. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, you can also just supplement with B vitamins. One of the things with B vitamins, if you take enough and you need them, then they can bolster you. If you take too many too long, they can actually cause you to do something called overmethylation, which can actually make you feel worse, not better. So it can cause anxiety and all kinds of aches and pains and mood symptoms. So you just want to make sure that you notice if you're taking B vitamins that you feel okay on them, and don't necessarily stay on them every day the rest of your life. Some people cut back to maybe like once or twice a week. You can either take just B12, but you want to take the form called methylcobalamin. And the way you're going to remember the bad kind, cyanocobalamin, is think of cyanide because it releases a molecule of cyanide when your body processes it. So cyanocobalamin is the cheap B12. It's what a lot of injections are made of. You want to make sure if you do an IV or an injection, it's methylcobalamin, or it could be hydroxycobalamin. Just make sure it's not cyanide, cyanocobalamin. And then if you are taking B vitamins, you want to make sure they have something in them called MTHF. And one of the ways people remember that, when I first thought, I was like, oh, like Monday, Thursday, Friday. And someone was like, mother effer. And I was like, okay, however you want to remember it. But this is really important because if you have certain genetics and you take just folic acid and not the methylated or MTHF folic acid, you can get very sick from it. So I would rather just don't take B vitamins than take the wrong kind of B vitamins. And brand matters, and in the handout I send, we will talk about brand. So a lot of people are asking about vitamin C and zinc. And so these, like vitamin C and zinc acetate, dosing recommendations vary very widely, so I'm not going to try to tell you what you uniquely should be taking. There are a lot of different opinions on whether you should take them preventatively or wait till you get sick and then bring them in. So I'm going to let you just make that call. But just make sure you don't start with a super high dose if you're doing it preventatively, because then if you need to up your dose, then you're kind of not going to have anywhere to move. And if you take too much of any supplement, it's either you're just going to excrete it and it won't help, or it could actually make you sick. So one of the tips to see if you're deficient in zinc is to look at your fingernails, and if you have little white spots on them, that's usually a zinc deficiency. So everyone look at your fingernails. Got a couple spots on 2 fingers. So, but you can also get zinc from just eating a really good diet and making sure you have strong digestion. There's another product that's highly recommended by Dr. Ruiz that if you work around people and you need extra protection, it can also help in the early infection stage, is a Gaia product called Echinacea propolis and golden seal. It's a spray, and he recommends that you spray hourly if you're around people or if you're sick. One thing about Echinacea, so there's studies showing that if you take Echinacea tea, it can actually increase your susceptibility to catch a virus. So that's not good. But the way it's extracted in a tincture form can actually help ramp up the immune system and shorten the duration, but it will increase the severity of symptoms. So that's not something you would want to do in late phase infection. You wouldn't want to do it once it moves deep into the lungs. That wouldn't be a good idea. So then you wouldn't do that spray or Echinacea tincture. Yeah, so those cytokine storms can be triggered by Echinacea. And then if you do get sick, again, you would keep taking those other supplements. You would, in the early phase, you would ramp up the NAC, you would ramp up the zinc and the C. One form of C, as long as it doesn't hurt your tummy, is called liposomal vitamin C, and it just basically helps transport more vitamin C into your body. It increases what's called bioavailability, so you get more in. But if for some reason that doesn't set well with your tummy, you can take just a buffered vitamin C. Some people also do IVs, but you know, right now we're trying to stay home, so IVs aren't really that practical. There's an herbal antihistamine I told you about last week called D-Hist. I'm going to put that on the handout. You don't have to remember it. There are expectorant herbs that you don't have to remember. We're going to send them out. One's called elecampane, or elecampane. I never know how to say it right. Elecampane. I like making tea out of it. It tastes good. It's earthy. Eucalyptus and peppermint are good. Like we talked about those vapor inhalations last week. So those are good. Consider not completely suppressing a cough. Like if you have a horrible gut-wrenching, can't breathe, can't sleep cough, then you can use some of these herbs to help calm it down. But you do want to keep moving the stuff back up out of your body. And again, just I can't emphasize enough the value of the vapor inhalations and neti pot, and just lots and lots and lots and lots of sleep. Meditation and anything you can do to soothe yourself. I'm going to mention a couple antiviral herbs is the last, let's see, yeah. So for the last part of the early phase of infection, there are some antivirals that I'm going to send you. And basically the reason I included them is because I found some kind of research that was showing they were helpful in other cases of coronavirus strain influenza or just viruses in general, and this, but particularly the respiratory tract. So andrographis is one such herb. It actually helps support your immune system and actually taking down inflammation, and it's antiviral. It's also used for improving digestion. It's used in Ayurveda. Olive leaf is another antiviral herb. It's kind of broad spectrum. And so that's one to consider. Garlic, just eating it, but also you can get garlic tablets or capsules. They're high in allicin. We talked about that last week. That can be antibacterial and antiviral. So a lot of these plants are broad spectrum. They kill viruses and bacteria. Elderberry is one that I heard some kind of discussion on. You see a lot of like websites are saying, yeah, elderberry, echinacea, because there are scientific studies on them, but you want to be very careful with overstimulating, again, these cytokine storms, this inflammatory response. So some people think a small amount of elderberry, like in a spray, is okay. Like, you know, just preventatively and in the early stages, but you wouldn't want to ramp up to a high dose of it as it progresses, because that could cause the same problem as the echinacea. And one thing I want to say about zinc lozenges and elderberry, those tend to have sugar in them, or cane sugar. I don't mind if there's some kind of raw honey in them, but if you're, you know, if you take a medicine that's supposed to take down inflammation and support your immune system, and you're putting an ingredient in it, like a refined sugar, that's actually causes immunosuppression and inflammation, then you're just kind of canceling it out a little bit. So you just want to look for, when you're buying supplements, try to keep sugar out of them, because when you're sick, that's the last thing you need. And again, Skya will say more about that. And then the final phase, and then I'll wrap it up, is if you, once the virus progresses, you would continue with the antivirals and all the basic supplements, but again, you would cut back on, things that are going to ramp up the immune system, like echinacea and elderberry and anything else that would ramp up the immune system. And you would want to maybe focus on, again, very high doses of NAC. This is when high dose vitamin C and zinc would be really helpful. And this is when something like turmeric and ginger, I mean, those are always good in food anyway. Those could help with inflammation, and CBD could also be very helpful with the inflammation and the pain, and then the distress of it could help you sleep if you tolerate it well. I know one person here didn't have a good experience with it, so if your body doesn't do well with it, don't take it. Same goes, that applies to everything. There's some people who get medical cannabis. If you do that, you want to do a very high CBD strain. There are medicinal properties to the THC, but you really, if you're trying not to have anxiety and you're trying to sleep, then you're better off with taking, a high CBD strain, unless you know otherwise. And one thing I want to say about anything you're doing with cannabis, do not smoke it, because you will hurt your lungs. So a lot of people think, oh, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I smoke cannabis, and you're still inhaling smoke. Smoke causes lung damage. So that's always the case. So you can eat it, do something edible, maybe a low temperature kind of vaping situation, but just even with, like, if you're really sick, do not inhale smoke in your lungs, or even hot things. Like, you want to do it in a more edible form. But again, if you're doing some kind of edible thing that's sugar, you're not helping yourself. And so I'm going to also, on the handout, I'm going to save this for if we have time at the end. I want Skya to get to talk now. I do have some herbs for anxiety, depression, hopelessness, and sleep. So, and we might turn that into a different subject, a different webinar. If this is an issue for people, we might just go ahead and have an anxiety and sleep webinar, so we can go more in depth with that. But I will send some tips on the handout. And I will also send a list of brands, because brand matters. So if you go get the cheapest thing at Costco, it's not necessarily going to help, and it could have ingredients that actually do harm. Okay, Harish, cool. All right, Skya, take it away, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
All right, thank you for all that great info, Traci. So again, as we look at diet, like, this isn't anything that's going to be specifically to treat coronavirus, because we don't have studies to show that. But again, it's like, what are the habits that people are going to come up against right now, as we're all in this kind of new stressful situation of being home and, like, reading things that are really disturbing, and just not having our normal routines. And that's going to be a lot of stress eating, right? And when we stress eat, we typically go for sugar. And we talked about in the last webinar last week, one of the reasons that happens is because our cortisol and therefore our insulin levels go up when we're stressed. And then we basically have an impulse to feed our insulin with sugar. And the problem with doing that is it puts us on this blood sugar insulin roller coaster, and it causes a lot of blood sugar variance, which means highs and lows. And that is an inflammatory thing. And that is something that reduces your immune system's ability to respond, in a really accurate and healthy way. So getting off of that insulin blood sugar roller coaster means eating balanced meals, and not, following the habitual, habit of trying to go for, like, sugar and sweets and junk foods right now. So really the best thing you can do is eat balanced meals, really try to focus on nourishing foods that make you feel good, they make you feel grounded, they make you feel satiated, you enjoy the food, but it's not that kind of addictive pleasure that we get from junk foods and from high sugar, refined food products. Okay, so we want to just be really aware not to be eating, the hollow calorie junk foods. We really want to be aware not to be eating the inflammatory things that are like preservatives and foods that have high herbicide, pesticide contents, things with food colorings and artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners. I mean, this should be a given right now, but there's a lot of people that don't really think about these things, and now is the time to think about them, because it affects all of us. It's like whatever anyone is doing is going to affect the whole. So now is the time to really start learning, like, well, what is in my food and how can I actually improve the quality of that food? Other inflammatory foods are obviously things that make your blood sugar spike. So refined sugars, also refined oils, especially the refined vegetable oils, which we talked about last week. Those are highly inflammatory, and they actually disrupt how your cells communicate, because each one of our cells has a membrane around it, and it's actually lipids that make up that cell membrane. And when we eat lipids or fats that are rancid, we're literally building those membranes out of rancid oils, and those molecules don't work the same as healthy whole oils. So definitely it's a time to reduce the soybean oil and the canola oil and all the refined vegetable oils that are in almost every processed food, right? Another note, I was listening to a doctor who runs a fasting clinic, and it was in Germany, and she was talking about, now might not be the time to do long fasting, especially because you can't have medical supervision and something like that. But intermittent fasting has been shown to really help our bodies, up our immune system, lower digestive distress, and just increase our overall vitality. So it's not something I would say, we should all be intermittent fasting, but the idea of time restricted eating, meaning we're choosing a time in our day to eat, and we have those balanced meals that make us feel nourished and give us the energy we need, but then we don't eat, late into the night before bed, and we give ourselves a period of actually being in a full fast so that our body can clear out, it can reset. And the benefit of that is that it really helps our circadian rhythms, right? So it's a really good thing to do with your sleep cycles, because it can really help you get higher quality sleep. It can help you to wake up more refreshed, and it can just help kind of clear out some of the gunk that is a part of our normal, metabolism. So intermittent fasting are basically like restricting the time that you eat, maybe like give yourself 3 hours before bed. And then I personally like to spend at least an hour or two before I eat in the morning. I like to do my yoga, my meditation. I like to drink water and like really clear out my digestive system before I eat again. But again, everyone's different. Some people have blood sugar issues and they need to eat more regularly. So this is like a loose, strategy that could help some people.
And also add people who have like a lot of adrenal issues, who are really stressed out. It's similar
Exactly.
to sugar issues.
Yeah, you might need to be nourishing more often. So that's
like for like people who have adrenal or blood sugar issues, you could do like an herbal tea at night with some coconut milk and some collagen protein and a little bit of honey, just to kind of carry, and a pinch of salt if you're able to have salt, so it can carry you through the night, so you don't wake up with crashed blood sugar, which can cause anxiety and fatigue in the morning. But so just listen to your body.
Exactly. And like for me, I have some digestive issues that I like having a longer break, but metabolically I need nourishment. So for instance, in the morning, I'll have a nice herbal tea and I'll add some milk or coconut milk and some collagen, like Traci's saying. So that can be like my first meal, but yet it still gives me that digestive rest. So there's many ways to play with that. But the key is like, do things that really make your energy rise and make you feel better. And if you're noticing you have a habit, like maybe eating something very high in starchy carbohydrates late at night, well, that might make your blood sugar, well, it will make your blood sugar spike before bed, and that might put you on that roller coaster. So as far as the blood sugar roller coaster and trying to even that out, you might have to readjust, and it might be a slow and steady process. It might not just be something that you can do all at once, because when you're in that habit of like, my blood sugar has spiked and then my insulin spikes and then my blood sugar crashes, and then your body's saying, I have to eat now, otherwise I don't feel good, it might take you a while to get back into like a normal mode. And so that's why eating balanced meals with lots of good quality protein, lots of good quality fats, and then lots of fiber, if your digestive system can handle it, actually helps to balance your blood sugar, okay? Versus a meal that's just full of starch without good quality fats and without the protein, like that's gonna raise your blood sugar much more quickly, okay? So again, high quality proteins and amino acids are the building block of our immune systems, right? As are the fatty acids. So we want to make sure that we're, whatever protein we're eating is good quality. So especially from animals, we want to make sure that those animals were raised in accordance with natural law, that they actually lived out in nature and they got sunshine and they ate grass or, lived in the ocean. And that way, the quality and the nutrition of the animal is going to be much higher. And as well, if it's a plant food, making sure that it's organic and it didn't, wasn't sprayed and all of that kind of stuff. An important note is, we always hear that chicken soup or like bone broth is an important thing for the common cold. And one of the reasons is because the bones and the tendons have a lot of collagen in them. And collagen is high in glycine, and that's an amino acid that's really important for our immune system. And just the glycine to methionine ratio is like a really important thing for health. And unfortunately, when people just eat muscle meat, which is what most meat eaters in our society do, they're getting too much methionine and not enough glycine. So if we look historically at like our ancestral diets, people ate the whole animal. They didn't just eat the muscle meat, And so that means that they were getting a broader variety of these amino acids. So that's one reason bone broth is so beneficial, is because that is an easy to digest and easy way to receive those amino acids that are from the connective tissues and from the bones.
And can I just a quick point about, like, if you don't mind making your own bone broth and you add chicken feet, that will increase the gelatinous quality or the collagen in the bone broth. And so store-bought bone broth tends to be really watery and not heavy. It's better than nothing, but it's really better to make homemade. Or there's some store-bought ones that are higher quality. They're just pretty expensive.
Yeah, and I know Costco has one that's the Pacific brand organic bone broth. And if you look at the label, it does have quite a bit of protein in it compared to all the other broths. So I would say if you're going to buy a boxed kind, that's probably the best one. But it is so much better to make it yourself. And it really isn't hard. If you have a crock pot or even an instant pot type electric pressure cooker, you can just do it so easily on your counter. And Traci's right, get chicken feet. You can also get marrow bones at the store. You can get those things for relatively inexpensive at the butcher, things like that. And then that's just a really good base for making the foods that you're cooking for yourself right now.
And there's also freezer. If you check the freezer section at a health food store, there's a good brand there too.
Cool. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of those now. Those, the freezer section is more and more bone broths. So the other thing for vegetables right now, cooking vegetables does make them more easy to digest. And so as long as you're not like cooking it, past the point of where you're just destroying all the nutrition, that can be a good way to be getting even more nutrition. It's like, I think a lot of people equate eating healthy with eating salads, but unfortunately it's actually really hard to get into those cell walls of raw plants. So it might be very cleansing and it might, be very low calorie, but it's also kind of low nutrition. So as far as really nourishing yourself right now, there's a reason that people tend to go for like soups and stews and cooked vegetables and things like that during winter months, when it's kind of a time to come in and like really build your immune system. Okay. So other things that are great, the good quality fats. So, obviously like unrefined vegetable oils like olive oil and coconut oil are great. Things like, hemp seed oil or flaxseed oil have like good omega-3s. But I just want to also note that, there's a lot of people that think animal fats are really bad for you because they have high cholesterol, and we're not going to get into that debate right now. But really, the animal fats from these healthy animals, like grass-fed animals or wild animals, they have some of the most fat-soluble nutrients that we really need for a strong immune system. Things like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin E. And these are things that you get from things like egg yolks, right? From pasture-raised chickens or wild salmon, sardines, grass-fed ghee or grass-fed tallow, beef tallow, or just eating meats that have a good amount of fat, right? And I know it's more popular to eat things like white meat chicken and things that are really low in fat, but now is actually the time to give yourself the fat-soluble nutrients to build your immune system.
The only exception would be if you have a gallbladder issue and just...
If you can't digest it, that's a whole other issue.
Basically. And also, Skya, I don't know if you're about to say this, but there's something in your lungs called surfactants that make your lungs work. And if we don't have cholesterol, and saturated fats, then we can't breathe. Like you have to have cholesterol to breathe.
Yeah, it's unfortunately your body will make it if you don't get enough. But there's definitely research to show that it might make too much, and it might not be as good as being able to get it from, you know, nutritious food. So again, ancestral foods have cholesterol in them. It's something that we've had in our diet, and we have in our cell membranes and all of our cells. So it's a vital component of our cells. Things like oysters, you know, they have a lot of zinc in them. So a lot of the minerals that we might not be getting enough of in today's diet, you can get from seafood, like oysters and mussels, and fish eggs are a really good source of nutrients. So those are just good ways basically to get, like we were talking a lot about supplements as, you know, nutrient supplements. Those are a really good way to get those, is to actually be using these really nourishing foods. Another really good type of food is the fungi. Like the whole kingdom of fungi is different than plants, and they have, most of them have a high content of this carbohydrate called beta glucans. And there is research showing that beta glucans generally help to build our immune system, and they help feed the microbiome, and they help with different things that can, you know, basically allow us to have a stronger immune response. And so these are not only like things like the portobello mushrooms have the beta glucans, but also some of these more medicinal mushrooms that we think of, like lion's mane and maitake and shiitake, and even some of the ones that are used in Chinese medicine, like reishi, chaga, things like that. So again, you can get these from just like your diet, eating mushrooms, but you can also go that step further and actually buy some of these like powders or teas or supplements that have some of these more medicinal mushrooms in them, if you feel called to.
You saying about portobellos yesterday? Did you just say that?
Yeah, portobellos, which is the same as cremini. Portobellos are just mature creminis. Those are like the brown ones at the store. Those also have beta glucans, you know. So it doesn't have to just be the crazy Chinese mushrooms. It can be the ones at the store.
Oats do too, right? They're high in beta glucans.
Yes, oats also have beta glucans, so oats are a good one. We do want to make sure that we're looking out for possible trigger foods. So not only can we have like bad habits when it comes to eating that might throw our metabolism out of whack or our digestion out of whack, or rob us of our energy, but we can also, and I would say these become trigger foods as our system becomes imbalanced. So as our digestion becomes imbalanced or our immune system becomes imbalanced, some of these foods that might not affect everyone can start to become more of a trigger. So we want to make sure that we're limiting them, or, you know, really listening to our bodies, or in some cases even getting tested so we know. So this would be like gluten, for instance. Like it can be hard to know whether your body's reacting to gluten. So if you're not actually having any kind of symptoms from eating it, that doesn't mean your body isn't reacting to it. And so in that case, you would need a test to know.
I tell them my STD metaphor.
Yeah, go for it.
So a lot of people, you know, think, oh, I don't have anything, but you don't know unless you get tested. And that's how gluten is, because it can affect your heart and your brain and, you know, less obvious tissues and have a delayed response. So the only way you know for sure, just like an STD, the only way you know for sure if you have a gluten issue is if you get tested. And that's not an allergy test. That's a different kind of test. And if you're interested, we can tell you what that is.
Yes. And then traditionally, if we look at, well, how did people use, like this was like the number one food on the planet for most of our human existence. So how did people get away with this? And I would say it's because of how it was prepared, and because it used to actually be fermented for long enough to break it down so that it didn't have the same effect that it has in all of today's modern gluten-based products. So that would mean, you know, traditional long fermentation would be a better form of eating any kind of wheat or grain product that contains gluten. But still important to be tested. And then as well, any seed has something called lectins in it, which damage your gut. So again, people knew to sprout and soak these things, and then even in many cases ferment them. You know, like in ancient Scotland, they used to ferment the oats. You know, they didn't just eat oatmeal right out of the package. They would let it ferment and be really sour for like 24 hours before they would eat it. So it's definitely important to just know that different seeds can, you know, cause some damage to the gut. Things like nightshades can be trigger foods for some people, and there's more. So it's just being aware that, like, pay attention to how the foods you're eating are making you feel, because if there's something that's kind of, you just notice like you don't feel right when you eat it, or you have some kind of symptom, then it's a good time to just take a break from it and, focus on other things. There's lots of things you can eat right now.
And I wanted to say a quick thing about one of the reasons we also have more food sensitivities is because we're under more stress. Like our bucket is too full, like we talked about last week, and also use of antibiotics because we're damaging our microbiome. So we're over sterilizing our bodies. And so now the microbes that would normally have digested nightshades or gluten aren't there anymore. And taking a probiotic doesn't necessarily repopulate them. So, there are things like glyphosate and whatever, but even if you do like a traditional sourdough bread preparation, you could still have an immune reaction to gluten depending on how your immune system handles those molecules. We've also changed the genetics of wheat and sprayed it with chemicals. So there's a lot of factors there.
Yeah. And so, focus on, eating vegetables that make you feel good, like cruciferous vegetables can really help your body make glutathione. Greens can have, lots of nutrients in them. Herbs and spices, things like turmeric and ginger, they can be used not only as herbal medicine, but they obviously can make your soup taste really good and be more enjoyable. And that's really something that's important that we want to get across is, don't go crazy thinking like your diet has to be perfect. Like, think of it more of like, how can I really like nourish and like enjoy this process of eating right now? We have this really rare pause where we have a lot more time to cook for ourselves and nourish ourselves. And so just use this as an opportunity to learn how to make new things that you enjoy, and how to even spend more time in the process of eating and enjoying the food. Because I notice, the more I do that, it's like the more I feel like I actually get from the food that I'm eating. And then I'm not, reaching for like sugary snacks and treats, because I feel so much more satisfied and satiated. And even on like a cellular level, I feel like I actually received more from the food just from being really present with it and really enjoying the flavors and the textures, and just like really like, noticing all of it and feeling all of it and having the whole experience. So we really think it's important to enjoy your food and feel the pleasure that eating brings, because that's supposed to be pleasurable. Okay. Fermented foods are a great thing unless you have digestive like bloating, SIBO symptoms, or histamine issues. But they can be a great, like we talked about, the probiotic lifestyle. So eating foods that are naturally full of probiotics, or that feed probiotics, which all the things that I've mentioned so far, they feed probiotics, the mushrooms, the vegetables, the bone broth, all of those things, they feed the good microbes in your gut. So that's the probiotic lifestyle that we're talking about. Organ meats are a great source of getting all of those B vitamins that we talked about, and even like iron and a lot of the things that you might be thinking you need a supplement for. You can oftentimes, use something like liver once a week, or, kidneys or thymus. Like, there's a lot of different organ meats that if you don't like the idea of eating that as a meal, you can also get it as a desiccated supplement. And so that would be like a whole food based supplement that you could get. Let's see. So yeah, I would just recommend you to eat slowly. Obviously chewing, like, it doesn't matter what you eat if you're not digesting it well, because you're not chewing it well enough. Or if you're in a state of stress when you eat, that's gonna affect your digestion negatively. So that even if you're eating the best foods on earth, you might not digest it well. And then all of a sudden it has a slight toxicity to your body. And our body, it can handle these stresses. So it's not like the end of the world if like you have a meal where, you get indigestion from it, but it's like start noticing the patterns and start like working towards new habits that are going to just make the whole process of chewing, swallowing, digesting, going through your belly and then excreting it, that at every stage there's more ease and there's more pleasure, and it just feels like it's working better. And so you actually have a lot of power to keep that system working really well, just by noticing how you feel and by doing the things that make you feel really good. Okay. So again, there's not like one right diet. You could be a total vegetarian or vegan and not be following, a lot of the things that I shared, and you can still be healthy. So there's how you want to eat, and then finding within that what works best for your body, and just really listening to your body. Okay. And I do like the idea of having some of your meals outside in the sunshine, touching the earth. Again, creating a little ritual like that can help you be more present to your food so that you're actually really receiving the nutrition even more.
And vitamin D through the sun. And
right.
the earth.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I think we talked about stress eating already. So
We can talk about that. One thing I do want to say is like what Skya said about the insulin. We have an evolutionary tendency to also, there is the insulin spike that makes us crave sugar from the stress hormones. And a lot of the reasons we've evolved to do that is because our body, you know, we either feel like we're being persecuted by something or there might be a famine. So a lot of times when there's stress, then our body can think, well, we better stockpile calories and it's going to go for the fastest, quickest thing. And also we're trying to boost serotonin and dopamine by eating carbohydrates and sugars, and that's not really a super effective functional way to do it. It's kind of a desperate thing, but if we live that way every day, then it can cause cumulative damage. So if one day you want to just, you know, just binge eat a whole bag of chips or whatever, it's not going to like make a huge impact on your life. But if you do it like all day, every day, you know, as a habit, then it's going to start damaging you. So just find a balance without judgment or shaming. And we'll talk more about the emotional side of things tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
Thank you, Skya. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
Are we ready to open it up to questions?
Yeah. What do you guys have for us? Any questions, comments, concerns, celebrations?
You have to unmute your mic if you want to talk. I see a mouth moving.
I think I unmuted that.
Joe. Hi, Joe.
Okay, I did unmute it. No, I just wanted to say that, not that I'm shy. I've been walking all morning and I was sitting back in the tub. I don't think you needed to see that. Other than that, thank you.
You're welcome, Joe.
Did you have a question, Joe?
That was it. That actually is very good that you folks are doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here, Joe. Anyone else?
Okay.
What foods would boost glutathione?
That's actually a good
Yeah.
one.
And what's your name? Because I haven't gotten to meet you before.
Oh, Amber.
Oh, that's Amber. I didn't recognize you with your hair braided.
Oh, yes.
We talked on the phone. We had a wonderful conversation. Sorry, Amber.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course. So foods that boost glutathione, which again, glutathione is our master antioxidant that is in every cell and it protects every cell. So it's a really important thing to have a good level, strong level of glutathione. So other than taking NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione, there's a number of things we can do. So one of them being cruciferous vegetables, which are high in sulfur-containing compounds that lead to the production of glutathione. There's different theories as to why that is. It could be a form of hormesis, which is like meaning that it's a slight stressor on the body that basically triggers the body to make more glutathione. So that is likely the
Cruciferous vegetables are like kind of the stinky ones, like, but I love them, like broccoli, cauliflower, arugula, kale, radishes. It goes on and on. But if you Google collard greens, the ones that kind of smell like farts when you cook them.
And all of those you have to cook too, yeah.
Yeah, you need to cook them. It's better to cook them. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you can't have a kale salad or eat something, but it's easier to digest when you cook it, unless you have like a stomach. Some people have really good stomach acid enzymes, and it's okay to eat more raw food, but that's not most people's. Especially if you've had antibiotics before, been through a lot of stress, or eaten a lot of sugar.
They can also be high in goitrogens, which can suppress your thyroid function. So that's one reason people cook them, is to lower those chemicals. But there's not like solid research saying whether or not that actually
I read
hurts.
And you have to eat an obscene amount of like raw, like the amount you would have to eat for that to really be a concern is ridiculous.
Another thing that's known for upping glutathione content are the branched chain amino acids that are found in things like milk products, or like the whey portion of the milk products. A lot of people don't do milk because they're sensitive to the casein, which is like the the larger protein that cheese is made out of. But the whey, which is what's left over after the cheese separates, are these little tiny proteins that are suspended in the liquid whey, and that is known to, provide the amino acids necessary to make glutathione. But again, I think it's when you have good quality amino acids and you're eating a diversity of amino acids in your diet, and you're getting enough of them, that your body is going to be able to make the glutathione from them. So.
I'm eating a lot of crickets.
Oh yeah, crickets.
Actually, a little plug here. It works for Sustainable Boost here in Hawaii, and they sell cricket powder, and you can make it like a flour, like a gluten-free protein flour. Is there anything else you want to say about cricket flour real quick, Amber?
Yeah, super high protein. All 9 essential amino acids, double the amount of protein in beef, high B12, magnesium. There's a lot. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Bugs, yeah, like our ancestors.
How can people get your product?
Right now, unfortunately, I'm not at the farmer's market. I'm usually at Kaka'ako due to my dad being sick. I can't risk it because I need to use all this stuff that you guys are teaching for him. But you can either direct message us on Instagram or go to our website. And if there's something you can't find, just, let us know.
Yeah, and could I give your number to anyone who contacted me directly asking?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Nina.
I mean,
Hi. I just look crappy and I didn't want to get on the video, but I wanted to say about whey. If you make your own ghee, which I do, that white liquid that's left over that you strain off is whey. So you can put it in soups, you can put it in your coffee, you can, it's a great way to get it, a great way to get whey. But just wanted to let you guys know, if you make your own ghee, save that white liquid, don't dump it.
Unless you have a casein albumin or lactose intolerance, then do that.
That's true. Yeah. If you're lactose intolerant, then you can't use it, but give it to somebody.
Yeah.
Sure.
Don't waste it.
If you make ghee and you have the ghee and you have the whey, does that change it at all with that system, or just eat butter? I was curious if that changes.
It depends on why you're eating ghee. So if you're eating ghee to avoid basically things that can cause immune system problems, like for example, if I eat butter, I get reactive. Like I don't handle it very well. My immune system does not like it. But if you don't have an immune system problem with cow dairy, then you can do whatever you want. You can eat any part of any of the dairy. So,
but clarified butter is like, just because it's just the oil, you can use it more like an oil in cooking, right? Yeah. Butter burns, ghee doesn't. You can leave ghee out. You probably can't leave butter out forever, things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
The ghee and the butter, make sure it's grass-fed or pastured.
Mm-hmm.
A huge difference in the impact on your body.
Can I ask you guys too, is coffee okay? I mean, I like to drink my coffee, but I'm wondering if it's not healthy, or, the properties of caffeine, are they okay, or should we avoid it?
It depends.
Yeah, I would say, as a healthy individual, like the object here isn't to just like take out every single possible stressor that might be in your diet. And caffeine and coffee, if you're using it moderately and, you're not relying on that for your energy throughout the day, then it doesn't have to be a super toxic part of your diet. But obviously there are some people that use it in a way that's like, cup after cup after cup, that is probably going to be really imbalanced their adrenal system. So I think it's one of those, you have to like look at your own system and like why you're using it, and then how much of it you're using. And if it feels like it's a healthy part of your morning ritual, then by all means keep it in. It's not like you're going to catch the coronavirus because you had a cup of coffee. But at the same time, if you're low energy and your body just isn't, if you're basically using it as a crutch because you aren't maybe taking care of yourself in some ways that your body is asking for, then now would be a good time to, address those things. doesn't necessarily mean don't ever drink coffee, but it might mean take a break so you can really like get the rest you need and like slow down and like build your body back up and feel good without it, right?
So basically, if you're using coffee as a substitute for sleep, rest, proper nutrition, if you're running anxious or some kind of burnout, then it can do more harm than good. And what you could do, but you never quit cold turkey. You have to wean, because there are these things called adenosine receptors in your brain that as you habituate your brain to coffee, then if you don't get coffee, you will be very sleepy in your brain. You can look at brain scans of coffee drinkers who haven't had their coffee yet, and their brain activity is suppressed. And then when they have coffee, they have the same brain activity of someone who never drinks caffeine. And so if you have a dependency on caffeine, you want to slowly transition off of it. And what I recommend is getting Swiss water processed or naturally decaffeinated coffee. You can get usually at health food stores, where they usually have a light roast, a medium roast, and a dark roast, depending on your preference. So it still has a little bit of caffeine in it, so it's not completely void of caffeine. So you could kind of gradually switch your ratios until you wean off, if you decide to wean off. If you're a pretty laid back, healthy, chill person and you just enjoy some coffee and it doesn't make you feel anxious or jittery or bad, then there's probably no reason to stop drinking it.
Great, because I do love coffee. But yeah, I know Pete's makes their decaf is actually a water process. It's supposed to be a really great process. So maybe I'll just do that, because it's the flavor mostly. It's not, I don't like the caffeine jitters. I don't usually drink coffee after 10 o'clock in the morning, because I know it stays in your system for a really long time. But thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great question, and Jessica was thankful for that question. And like if you're drinking coffee just for the taste of it, then getting a high quality Swiss water process decaf would probably be a little less stress on your body. Yeah. Oh, and also just if you can get organic, some pretty nasty sprays are used on coffee plantations. And if not for your own health, sometimes they employ children who benefit from working the plantations.
I have a question. This is Jessica speaking.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi. Thanks again for this amazing, amazing hour. It lives on in my week, and I pass it on to wonderful folks who are very grateful. My question right now is about vitamin C. Mm-hmm. Other sources of information are really talking about vitamin C, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Cool. I'll take my question off the air.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, and is this Jessica, if you could help clarify, were you here when I was talking about vitamin C earlier, and I was wondering maybe what I might need to clarify specifically?
I couldn't, was that a follow-up question, Tracy? I couldn't quite hear the beginning of that.
About vitamin C earlier, and so I'm kind of curious what additional information you want about vitamin C.
She might not have been on earlier.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah, I could go. I'll go back on the video.
No, but I think it's still good to talk about more, because there is, like I've definitely read, the proponents of taking like 2,000 milligrams every few hours, to prevent from getting sick. The problem I have with that high a dose is like you're definitely going to have gastric issues with that, because it's really not, something that you can absorb at that high level. There is, like Tracy mentioned, buffered vitamin C, which is basically a calcium ascorbate. So it isn't acidic, so it won't have that same effect on the gut. And then there's also the liposomal, which is more bioavailable, so you probably don't need as much of it. Now, again, there isn't like research showing that like, people that are taking high doses of that are going to be less likely to catch the coronavirus, or in the cases of having the coronavirus, whether or not it actually helps you to fight that faster. But we do have research showing that the common cold, which is a type of coronavirus, the duration of that is lowered in people who take high doses of vitamin C. So I think a lot of people are extrapolating, saying, well, and historically this is used to help people in their immune response. And so it could be helpful in this case, but there's just not like solid research with this particular strain.
Actually, with this particular strain in China, they actually were using vitamin C IVs, and glutathione IVs. I don't know if there's anything in glutathione form. I'm guessing glutathione. Anyway, but it was really outcomes. And so I know there are people who have the numbers. So there is a study that's being carried out right now. Unfortunately, we won't get the results until September, but it's looking at COVID-19 patients and the use of vitamin C to actually fight the virus. And it's looking, I would say it's likely that it's beneficial to have the virus, and it could to some degree boost your immune system. But like I said, I wouldn't just go crazy with high doses of C. I would save high doses of C in case you don't have the big guns until, or in case that you become.
Thank you. And thank you.
I would say just personally, like I feel like kind of like not super mega dose, but just like a nice, I would say like half of a gram kind of a dose. It's something that I do of the buffered vitamin C, and I just do that in the morning. Like I'm not taking it all day throughout the day, but I just feel like that's a good thing in general to kind of keep the immune system like nourished with vitamin C. So I'm not doing that to, think, oh, well, this is going to keep me from getting sick. Like I'm still trying to stay away from people that are sick.
Oh, yeah.
But I just feel like that's a good thing overall to be supplementing with, because it's such a low risk supplement. When you take it that kind of dose, you can just, pee out any extra, and it's not going to have much toxicity.
Yeah.
And not super expensive.
And you can.
Sorry, Traci, I'm not hearing you when you talk. I wonder if you'd mute the other mics, maybe we'd hear you better.
I don't know how to mute the other mics.
Oh, okay. Maybe try now. Let's hear you.
Maybe if you're not. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Now I forgot what I was going to say. I was saying you could Google what foods are high in vitamin C. You might be surprised because people think it's just like sweet citrus fruits. Like, oh, I'm just going to drink tons of Minute Maid orange juice. That's not really, that's from concentrate. I don't really recommend that. You're better off eating vegetables. And some fruits are high, citrus can be high in C, but so can broccoli, so look into that. And also, there's a question in the chat from Harish and Sita. Can you speak more about lectins? So lectins are compounds they're in gluten, but they're also in other legumes and grains. And so there's been concern in particular people to avoid lectins because they're really lining and that ruin your immune system. And I think if you already have leaky gut, and you kind of notice if you eat certain grains or legumes and you get bloaty, gassy, you get irritated digestive symptoms, then that's probably a sign you need to either sprout them, slow cook them, or at least refrain from those foods until you rebuild your digestive fervor. So I think it's a little bit unreasonable to just say no one should ever eat any food that has lectins, because some people have problems with it. So gluten is probably the high lectin food that's most concerning. I mean, protein and wheat is probably the high lectin food that's most concerning. But yeah, so I think if you especially if you sprout them or cook them a long time, like legumes in particular, they have less of an impact. Did that answer your question, guys? Yeah. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Amber.
Does vitamin C and glutathione together work better? Because I was told that it does. Somebody else told me that they take it at night and that it's better absorbed. I wasn't sure if that was true or not.
I'm not quite sure, Skya. I don't know if they have a synergistic effect on each other, like as in they need to be taken at the same time. I just know that they both do things that support mucosal immunity that are from different angles, that when you put the two pieces together, it's a more comprehensive approach. But as far as
that's what I would say too. The other thing is taking glutathione, like you can't really take that orally. So the only pathway to take the actual glutathione is rectal suppository, inhaling it, or transdermally through your skin. So that's why we're recommending the NAC, because it's a cheaper precursor to your body making the glutathione yourself, because buying glutathione in one of those 3 forms can be quite expensive, and you want to make sure you get like a really good quality, obviously.
Those
So
burn, just telling you.
yeah. So yeah, I would say, you know, C and glutathione, like they really go well together as far as like cellular protection and, you know, antioxidant capacity, things like that. Some people might argue that, you know, some of the things we do to like raise our own body's ability to have this, like, say, glutathione response, like exercise, for instance. Like exercise is an oxidative stressor on our body, but it's like a good kind, that if our body is well nourished and it has all the building blocks it needs, it actually increases and it upregulates all of the endogenous antioxidants like glutathione and superoxide dismutase and these other protective mechanisms in our body. So there's definitely new research basically saying in those cases, you probably don't want to be taking high antioxidants like vitamin C or some of the other herbal or plant food-based antioxidants, because it'll actually like rob your body's ability to make those beneficial changes in your cells and in your metabolism. So like people are saying around exercise, you probably don't want to be doing something like vitamin C, like right around exercise. But I could imagine like before bed, that would be a good time, because then your body is able to just use that to kind of put out some of the inflammatory fires and, you know, oxidative stresses.
Yeah, that basically antioxidants can help with overnight repair. And all Skya is saying, because I got kind of really confused when I started hearing all that he's saying is, number one, endogenous just means made in your body. So endogenous antioxidants are the ones your body makes, like your liver makes glutathione.
Like glutathione.
Yeah. So, and what he's saying is that if you take, you know, vitamin C and, you know, NAC, just take them at night so they can help with repair overnight, but don't take them right before you exercise, because it can cut some of the benefits of your exercise. That's all. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Anybody else before we wrap it up?
Hi, Tracy's mom.
That's
yes, we will have a good example of a good NAC on the list. Thank you for that.
Hi, Tracy's mom. Glad you're feeling better.
And Skya's mom waved too.
Yeah.
That's Lou. That's Skya's mom.
And I just want to say, like, I love how my mom is an example of like when you really do apply these principles and like live by them in your own way. Obviously, it's not strict or anything, but when you live by them, you can really prevent the complications of a complex disease like type 1 diabetes, which she has. You know, she's a very healthy, beautiful person, and as she's aging, she's not suffering from some of these more, you know, some of these terrible complications that are common with type 1 diabetes. So I just think she's an example of like how this stuff really works.
And next week, go ahead and formulate. We'll take 2 more questions, but as you're formulating, and the answer, Amber, yes. Hold on, I'll get back to that in a second. So I just want to say for tomorrow's webinar, we're going to be talking about, it's going to be less of a presentation and more of an experience, where we're going to be supporting each other and dealing with kind of, it's from downward spiral to upward spiral. And so we want to really acknowledge the stress that this whole situation has put on us. Like if we try to do like, we're just going to make positive, happy thoughts and we're just going to cover up our emotions, that usually just creates more resistance against what we're feeling. So it's important to acknowledge what we're feeling and really have space for it and feel it. And then there's some things we can give you to help release the tension in your body by feeling your way free, instead of like just shoving it down or trying to positive over it or going into a downward spiral of worst case scenarios. So this has impacted us from so many sides: financial, emotional, social. And so we want to provide support. We'll talk a little bit more about emotional eating. We'll talk a little bit more about anxiety and stress. Although, like I said, I think I'd like to do a separate webinar on anxiety and sleep. So I'd really love you to join us tomorrow and bring friends. It'd be lovely to see more people. And then we're still going to have that offer for, we're going to send the replay with the Calendly link, so that if you have any questions specific to your health, that we'll be sending a link, and then we're taking some of our potential client slots, and then we're just letting them be COVID-19 support slots. And then if you need one-on-one support, we do offer one-on-one coaching and consulting. So we have 3 and 6 month programs for individuals, and then we're also getting together some groups. We've had some people who are expressing that they're interested in some small groups we're putting together that can still get you some great results, but a little more affordable than those longer one-on-one programs. So if you're interested in any kind of small group support or one-on-one support, you can also contact us with that. Anything else, Skya, before we take our 2 last questions?
No, I think that's it. I look forward to just some of the community building and support tomorrow.
So Amber asks, will you have an example of a good NAC on your list, and does NAC interact with anything? The only thing I'd say about NAC is on occasion, someone will notice they get a little kind of heartburn or reflux when they take it. So if that happens to you, it doesn't happen to me in particular, but if it happens, so take it on a full stomach. Otherwise, I really wouldn't worry about it interacting with anything. Just maybe take it away from exercise or heavy exercise. And I like pure encapsulations. I'll have a list of good brands. I won't necessarily recommend a brand for every single product, but I'll give you lists of companies that are decent. All right.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.
Is that it? Is there anything else? I said 2 more questions, but maybe you don't have any more. Okay. I'm going to stop recording, and we'll see you tomorrow. And then anyone who would like to stay on and just chat a little bit, or like unmask your camera, then you can do that. If you want to keep your camera turned off, you can just chat a little bit, and you can turn off your mic. So I'm going to stop the recording right now. Thanks for joining us.